There we go. Andy, how are you?
I am very well, mate. Very good.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Yeah, we are just having a chat before I hit record about the purpose behind the ground up and where it kind of originated from. I just kind of go through it again, just for anyone that kind of watching this and listening to this. But I was just saying to Andy, there's a lot of people that see results and they see the life that people can actually lead, but they're very skeptical. So I wanted to bring Andy on because we've connected through Limitless mainly. Obviously, working directly with James, and obviously, we went and had probably one of the best steaks that I've had in a very long time. When I came up and met you in Manchester, and Andy's someone that I massively respect. He's had a huge impact on a lot of mutual friends that we're both actually working with as well. So I wanted to kind of get him on here to talk about his journey and where he's kind of came from start to finish to show you that having an impact in creating the life that you actually want and helping change other people's lives as well, and achieving that goal that you really, really want to achieve is realistic and can be attained. So I want to kind of paint the picture with Andy today. So if I was to bump into you in the street, Andy, and I said, "Who are you and what do you do?" What's your answer to that?
Um, if it was purely just on the professional, then I would probably just say that I'm a life coach primarily.
Yeah,
Business mentor adjacent to that, but life coaching is the primary focus.
yeah,
If it's the whole picture, then I'm a dad of three as well. And to be honest, that would be probably the more important element of it, because that is obviously, for the purposes of what we're talking about as well, the main driving force behind me actually getting from, to coin in on the name, getting from literally rock bottom, the ground up,
yeah.
to where I'm at now, and obviously with the projection for where I'm going to go to.
Yeah, of course. And obviously you're having like I mentioned, you're having a massive impact on a lot of people's lives. So if you can kind of explain exactly what you kind of do, like within your company at the moment as well, sort of day to day, also around that family life as well, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah. So with the life coaching, it's that I think life coaching is probably one of the most misunderstood forms of coaching. If you were to tell somebody that you're a fitness coach, most people would immediately just like that. They think, right, cool. You either train people in the gym, you
Yeah,
help people with the fitness side of things.
it's quite clear.
Yeah. Whereas with life coaching, people just don't get it.
Yeah,
Some people think that it's like helping people with just like the very normal day to day life things. And it's not. I think probably the most accurate terminology for it would be an emotion coach, because that is generally, for the vast majority of my clients, that is the main thing that I focus on, coaching them and teaching them the ability of emotional regulation and thought control. Because once you've mastered those two things, life takes on a whole new meaning. Your perspective of life in general will completely change. You can get someone that is really, really pessimistic, and you can almost convert that person to being an optimist simply by taking them through the process of actually being able to control the thoughts, regulate their emotions in real time. So instead of it being hindsight, a situation occurs, you have your emotional reaction, and then after the fact, you look back on it and you think, shit, why did I say that? Why did I do that? I should have done X, Y, and Z instead. As your emotional regulation improves and increases over time and you master that function, you're in the moment, and you regulate your emotions before you even react. So you manage to mitigate the vast majority of the issues that most people experience in life is through emotionally driven shit decisions.
yeah,
And if you can regulate your emotions in real time, and just as things are happening, you can actually regulate in that moment, you don't make those decisions. You take a step back, you'll observe it as a whole. And instead of just thinking, well, this is how I feel right now, so this is what I'm going to do, you start to think, well, what are the consequences of that particular action? And do I want to then commit to that action knowing I'm going to have to live with those consequences? No, I don't. So you take a step back, you don't commit the action.
yeah.
That is fundamentally the main thing that I do. And the application of that spreads across general day-to-day life things, relationships, depression, anxiety, issues around eating, anything like that.
Yeah, yeah, and obviously seeing some of the results that you've obviously created with our mutual sort of clients and friends as well. It's like I read the Chimp Paradox years ago, and it's that difference, isn't it, between obviously your chimp brain and then obviously the emotional side of things that you
Mhm.
mention there, but what you're kind of doing is you're taking that, essentially that application, but really, really engraving it into people so they can obviously make those decisions beforehand rather than hindsight, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you know, it's like they always say, you hindsight, vision is 20/20. You always see things perfectly. That's because usually you're now suffering the consequences of the action. And it's the negative impact of that that makes you look back and then wish that you could go back and change something.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, that is the problem that then perpetuates, you know, the onset of depression and things like that, because they're then wishing they could go back to change something because they've hurt someone or they've caused the end of a relationship, whatever the problem is. But you can't go back and change anything.
Yeah.
So then they need to work on acceptance. So the more issues like that you can mitigate overall, the better the quality of your life's going to be. And it's definitely something that nowhere near enough people are aware of. So many people just think you are your emotions. You have to just react to everything that you think and feel. And that's probably one of the biggest fallacies that is generally believed within society. I would say as much as 80%, 85% of the emotions that we feel on a day-to-day basis are worthless. They don't need to be given any kind of validation because they come and go. They're all emotions transient, but most of them, they're gone before you should react to them. But people think every emotion is important.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's one of the issues. I know we spoke about this when we were at Gaucho, about the difference between understanding and expressing emotion and being emotional.
Yeah.
You know, and it's when somebody becomes emotional and being overly emotional, which is when that quote that I enjoy saying, statement, phrase, whatever, where when emotion is the poison, logic is the antidote. Because again, that's the incorporation of the two brains. You've got your chimp, the emotional brain, and then you've got the intellectual brain. Whereas, you know, logical processing, as I refer to it, you know, overcome emotional overwhelm with logical processing. Because if you start to ask yourself questions and take yourself through that line of inquisition, the emotional brain has to downregulate because you can't keep both parts active at the same time.
Yeah, true. What's the most, to kind of paint the picture and give an example for anyone to truly and fully understand this? Is there been an example, like a standout example of a client that's come to you in a set position and then they've left you in a different position, like mentally a lot tougher, a lot stronger, physically a lot better, and literally just change their life around by getting their mind right?
The one that probably stands out to me the most off the back of that question is my client Mary. So we don't work together anymore. We're still in touch, but we don't work together anymore.
Yeah.
And when she first came to me, she was originally diagnosed with depression when she was in her mid-20s. And it's now 30 years further on. She's been medicated for it for the majority of that time. She's been through therapy, counseling, psychologists, psychiatrists. You know, there's been multiple attempts, just all sorts of awful process to go through, and especially over 3 decades. And when we first started, the initial call, the floods of tears the entire time, and I could see how emotionally overwhelmed she was all the time.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just insert. It was the emotion was behind her eyes all the time, ready to come out. Just the floodgates were just breaking all the time. And she genuinely didn't think that anybody would be able to help her. And I said to her, I was just like, we'll try this approach and just see what happens. And at 9 weeks of us working together, we started the session and she said, my husband wants to thank you for giving him his wife back. Because she'd changed so much. People at work were noticing and were commenting on it, how much lighter she seemed and how much happier she seemed. You know, just her ability to actually articulate her thoughts. That was probably one of the biggest issues when we first started. She would have that much in her head all the time that what she wanted to say was just getting mixed up with everything else.
Yeah.
And then by the time that we came to a close after 12 weeks, she was just what she thought she spoke. And when we came to the end of our time together, she was, I think, a week away from coming off her antidepressants. which she'd been on for 2 decades.
Yeah, that's
And
it.
that was under full supervision with the doctor. A doctor was aware of it and was monitoring her and everything, because that's something, whoever I work with, if they're taking any form of medication and they do want to begin stopping it, they have to make sure that the doctor is aware of it first. Otherwise, I won't start taking them down that path.
Yeah, yeah, and that's one of the things that I've kind of noticed with you as well. I mean, that's one of many where you've had a fantastic impact on someone's life, and something we've kind of discussed before. People spend so long when they've got an issue talking about the issue, but never actually facing it, and that's a perfect example there on antidepressants for 2 decades. Probably talking about the problem over and over again, but never actually facing it and solving it, and that's exactly what you do.
Well, that was I think the main thing that was the most surprising for Mary. When we first started, she was so used to, with all the counsellors, therapists, etc., that she'd seen all the other professionals rehashing everything from her past, the things from her childhood, from adolescence, etc., that she'd experienced that were the root cause of all of the trauma. But it was just like being dragged over broken glass again.
Yeah.
Whereas with me, we started and she got a few sentences into making me aware of what the initial instances were and how old she was. And I just went, right, cool. I said, that's enough. And she was just like, but what do you mean? I said, that's as much as I need to know. I said, we don't need to talk about it again. And she, like, that was like, what, yeah, I've not told you. I was just like, you told me as much as I need to know. I was like, so that's it. We don't need to talk about the problem anymore, because the problem isn't going to change. So we'll stick a pin in it and we'll just focus on the solutions that are going to get you beyond that problem so that you can let go of it all. And that's all we did. The actual incidents, the trauma themselves, the events were never discussed beyond that point. Yeah. So within 5 minutes of the first hour, it was never spoken about again. And there was many sessions that followed after that. There was communication in between sessions. There was communication on the dashboard. And it was never mentioned because it doesn't need to be. Whereas that is one of the biggest flaws that I see on a regular basis, or certainly hear about on a regular basis, with people that go through traditional therapies. And it's this constant going over the same thing again and again, and as if you're going to be able to talk it into submission. And that isn't the point. That isn't the way to fix the problem.
Yeah, you help people move on, and I've seen this before as well. It's like, even I think it was Tony Robbins mentioned, he had a conversation with someone, I can't remember what it was now, but he spoke to this guy who was like, oh, I've not smoked cigarettes or I've not had alcohol, I can't remember which one it was. It's been 5 days, and he's like, why are you counting? It's like you're counting the days since you've not had that one thing, so your mind keeps going back to that one thing over and over again. And that's what I see with traditional therapists as well. So you get people to move on, which is the most important thing. But mate, you're having a massive impact on people's lives. Like, hats off to you, massive kudos to you. You're doing a phenomenal job. Should be proud of yourself. Should be proud of yourself.
Thanks, mate.
I want to go all the way back. So, like I said, I want to paint the picture. So, you're having this huge impact on people's life now, but I want to paint the picture as to how you've got to this point that you're at now. So take me all the way back to childhood, Andy. Did you have a little bit more hair there?
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? My hairline used to literally, it looked like somebody had got a ruler and drawn it on with a Sharpie. It was like there, and it was so straight. That doesn't exist anymore. But I've got to love the beard, so it's fine.
The beard's better than mine, so I'll let you off with that. But what was childhood like for Andy?
You know what? My childhood was amazing by all standards. I'm very, very fortunate, very lucky to be raised by 2 incredible parents. Both of them fiercely intelligent. My dad is where myself and my older brother John get our work ethic from. Yeah. Because he just worked and worked and worked and worked. He never took sick days. I think in a 40-year career, he was off sick 3 times or something absurd like that. And over a 40-year career, averaged 73 hours a week.
Yeah, you told me when we had a steak, it was, crazy.
Which is a madness when you actually do the math on what's needed in order to achieve that. But that is one of the most invaluable lessons that he's taught me. All the way through, from being as young as I can remember, constantly being told 2 things: work as hard as you possibly can for the things that you want, and you are responsible for your actions. And that personal responsibility is something that was just, we didn't have an option. We didn't have it was, you are responsible for the things that you think, the things that you say, and the things that you do. If you do something and it's bad, you own it. But obviously in the same way, if you do something good, you own it. It's yours. You know, but that is probably one of the reasons why my brother and I have never really struggled with self-esteem or anything like that, because when we were good, we would be praised for it. When we were bad, we would get fucking lambasted for it. You were put in your place. You knew that you'd done something wrong.
Yeah.
And it was the balance between the two that gave us good moral compasses and the ethics that we both kind of live by on a daily basis.
Yeah.
But yeah, like my dad, disciplinarian, work ethic, responsibility, education, you know, those were his domain. Empathy, love, you know, caregiving, and understanding that level of responsibility as well came from my mum.
Yeah.
So we were getting incredible, important life lessons every day from both sides. And yeah, that because of the work ethic of both of my parents, the quality of life that we grew up in was very good. I'm not one of those where I've got a fucking horrible backstory of poverty and abuse and all that shit, and I've overcome it.
Yeah.
But I think part of the reason why I am as empathetic as I am and I'm as driven as I am to make sure that other people live the life that they're actually capable of living and break free from things that they've experienced in the past is because of the way that I was raised. Because I was raised to help others, to be there for others, because we were lucky.
Yeah.
But it wasn't luck, it was all because of hard work. But, you know, in the grand scheme of things, myself and my brother were lucky because the only reason that we had the parents was just the genetic lottery.
Yeah.
You know, but that has been the reason why I am the way that I am. Because I know how lucky I am to have had the upbringing that I've had, and how big a disparity that there are for other people in comparison to what I experienced.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so I had a privileged upbringing, but it wasn't silver spoon. So yeah, that's where it started. And then I knew from a young age that this helping people was what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I remember in year 10, the most worthless thing, probably one of the things that you do in school, is getting a careers advisor to come in and talk to you, who I'm pretty sure is there to try to get ideas for a new career from the kids that are speaking.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I remember sitting down with her. I remember everything. I remember the office that we were in. I remember what she looked like, everything. And she was like, "What do you want to do when you're older?" And I was just like, "I don't know. I just want to help people." And she was just like, "Okay, but how? Do you want to be a doctor? Do you want to, you know, this, that, that?" And I was just like, "I don't know. I don't know what I want to do or how I want to do it. I just know that I want to help people."
Yeah.
And that was all that I could give her. And then everything that I've done since leaving school and working has always been centered around helping people. So when I finished college, I qualified as a PT. So that was what I did right from then.
Yeah.
So like from being 19, just before I turned 19, I was a PT. And I did that from 2005 until 2016, 17. That was how long I did face-to-face PT for. Started online coaching in 2011.
Yeah.
2010, 2011. That was before it was a thing.
Yeah.
At that point, it was like, how can you coach people online? It wasn't a thing.
Still get it now.
Yeah. And then in the middle of all of that, I was a financial advisor.
Okay.
Which again was helping people with debt, insurances, like money management, that sort of thing. And then when I came out of the finance industry, that's when I went full time back into fitness. And then that career escalated through, because at about 2010, that's when I really started my own personal development journey to get a hold of my own emotions.
Yeah.
Because it was around about that point that there were a couple of incidents, and I was like, I need to get my shit together, because if I keep doing this, eventually one day something bad's going to happen. So then that was 2010, 2014 when I went back to personal training and online coaching full time. I was still doing it, but it was just background noise.
Yeah, got you.
I then incorporated a lot of what I'd been learning over the last 4 years into elements of my coaching. So that was kind of the birth of the life coaching side of things. But I didn't label it as a service that people would pay for until 2018.
Yeah.
Sure, it's 2018. So I was doing it for about 4 years before I felt that I had any kind of right to be able to go,
Yeah.
it's life coaching.
Earn your stripes, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is another thing that a lot of people don't do anymore.
Yeah.
But it's built over time. And then it got to the point where my love for fitness coaching had really started to fade. And my love of life coaching was just going through the stratosphere. And then that's when I switched over, went full send on life coaching, connected with James, and then that's taken us to where we are now.
Yeah, fantastic journey as well. So go back to the very beginning, even with your sort of upbringing, just mentioning your parents there, something that I picked up on by having conversations with quite a lot of people who are like doing good things is the type of environment that you're in as a child when it comes to your mum and dad. It's like I kind of picked up on the fact that there's essentially like this scale between fear and respect, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the perfect environment when you're like across the people that I've actually spoken to is that it's bang in the middle in regards to the leadership that you've actually been brought up in. So
Mm-hmm.
you have like the love and the caring aspect. So obviously you got the respect. But then if you did something wrong, obviously you had that element of fear as well. So you kind of like bang in the middle. So
Yeah.
where do you think that love and that sort of a focus on wanting to really, really help people came from? Because I was exactly the same when I was at school. I wanted to help people, but I didn't quite know like where it came from. Where do you think it came from for you?
To be honest, I don't know. I feel like it's just always been there. Like when I was even again, but all the way back to primary school and starting in primary school, I used to bully the bullies.
Yeah.
So I've always had that like kind of protective mindset. You know, I think the first incident of it was my friend Ben. We must have been 5, coming over to me in the playground, tears streaming down his face, me asking him what was wrong, him telling me that this other lad that was the year above us had just kicked him, and me walking over to this lad and just saying, "Did you just kick Ben?" Him saying, "Yeah," and me just slapping him across the face as hard as I could as a 5-year-old, just full on bang, and he'd burst into tears. And that was the start of it for me. That was just like protecting people that weren't in a position to protect themselves. Yeah. And obviously it's just manifested and grown into different things. But I don't think there was ever a specific lesson or anything like that kind of took me to that place. I think it's just an amalgamation of natural events like that and lessons that were bestowed over the years by my parents. And
yeah,
I think that's the majority of it.
Yeah, you're probably in scenarios and situations over and over again where you were in a position where you've helped people, and then it's just naturally kind of progressed from there. Then it's naturally kind of progressed.
Yeah, because what I know I know this from more of a professional angle with the people that I've worked with, but you can often get a lot of people that grow to help people as much as possible, because it's usually one of 2 pathways. It's one that something that I've said to a good number of clients that always gets, if it's correct, gets a very visceral reaction from them, emotional reaction, is saying we grow to become the person that we needed most when we were a child. Now, I've had a lot of clients where when I've said that to them, that's been it. It's been floodgates open, because they realise that is what it is. The reason that they give so much of themselves to everybody, to try to love people into loving them, is because that's what they didn't have when they were younger. They didn't have that security. They didn't have that conscious knowledge that it didn't matter what happened.
A missing piece.
That person was always going to be, that person was always going to be there to love you.
Yeah.
So they try to provide that for everybody that they come into contact with. And what was the other angle of it? I can't remember.
You're right though, because everything around your childhood kind of stems from it. It's like, I know I'm not a massive fan of Stephen Bartlett, but I like the angle that he goes in when he obviously gets his guests on, because you are kind of shaped from that. And I think me and you, in regards to that fear and respect angle that I was touching on, I had a very similar upbringing in that, and the sort of void, the piece of my puzzle that I've always tried to sort of develop and inject into my life was the sort of aspect of proving my parents wrong.
Mm.
And that's the thing that's always driven me, because they
Right.
were, both of them were they both worked very, very hard, like grew up in that environment, but they were both self-employed, not businessmen and women, if that makes sense. So
Right.
my mum's a hairdresser, my dad's a builder, both the hardest working people in the world, but they never had that drive to really push their companies further or really grow their companies. It was just, I'm working for myself. So every single time that I tried to step out of employment, or I tried to step into a risky situation, it was always, oh no, 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 don't do that. Don't do this, don't do that. So they had the employed mindset. So the piece of my puzzle, from what you're kind of saying there, just to kind of give an example, the piece of my puzzle was to be like, no, fuck that. Like, I'm going to prove you wrong, and I've done that time and time again. Actually, growing up as well.
Yeah, because I think that's probably one of the only negatives that I can really kind of pinpoint from the way that I was raised, and it was the scarcity mindset. Even though we definitely weren't short of cash, and it was because my dad worked so hard and he saved so much, but he was so risk averse, and it is to this day. Whereas myself and my brother have were the opposite.
Yeah.
So, and obviously that's counterintuitive, because generally the way that somebody's raised is the way that it's the path that they follow. Yeah. But like myself, you've gone in the opposite direction. I think it's because sometimes you can just see that there is another way.
Yeah.
I think that's something that's difficult for an awful lot of people. When you get to that age where you actually realize that there were certain things that your parents did that they were just wrong about.
Yeah.
And it can be really difficult for a lot of people to sit back and actually accept that, because obviously you always pedestal your parents, don't you? Just like, everything that they did was good, what they say is true, etc. And then you get to the age where you're exposed to different information and experiences, and you go, oh shit, they're actually wrong about that. That isn't the way that it works. Like, a common one is people our generation being told by the parents, don't get a credit card.
Yeah.
They're awful. It's that, it's this, it's that, because they never understood credit management. They don't understand that you can actually create wealth when you utilize credit well.
Yeah.
So that's another side of it. And to go back to what we were talking about before, because my brain's finally remembered what the second point was. One type of person, or a specific trauma, I suppose, that people can experience, where we see this unwavering desire to help people, is people that as a child experienced parentification, where maybe they needed to step up and adopt an adult role, whether it was to be the caregiver to their younger siblings, or whether it was to be the caregiver to a parent, and that wasn't upholding their duty. And that can have really, really serious consequences for someone as they get older. It causes a lot of damage to children when they experience parentification.
Yeah. What type of damage? Because something that you just touched on there, because me and my sister are 10 years apart. So every single time that my mum and dad used to go to work, I was typically like the babysitter. So I kind of stepped into that parental role. Like, what sort of side effects from that have you actually seen from people?
One of probably the most damaging is that they believe that they don't deserve that level of care. They should never be cared for. They should always be the caregiver. And somebody trying to give them that level of love and affection can be incredibly uncomfortable for them, to the point where they will just repeatedly sabotage relationships, and they will naturally gravitate towards a relationship where there is a big disparity between the amount of effort and love and affection that they give to their partner in comparison to what they get back, because that's what they believe to be, that's how love should feel, that's how relationship should be.
Yeah.
That I would say that's the first thing that kind of comes to mind, as far as the damage that I have then had to rewire.
Yeah.
Because it's been ingrained from a very young age. Yeah. It's that you are not to be cared about, you are to care for others.
Yeah. Is that something you've been through as well?
That I've been through?
Yeah.
No.
Did you brother older or younger?
My older brother is 21 months older than me.
Gotcha.
But as far as far as parentification, if my brother or I tried to step outside of the bounds of what a child should be doing, depending on whose responsibility that job was that we tried to do, that respective parent, be it my mum or my dad, would stop us and be just like, no, I'll do that for you. So it wasn't that they were trying to prevent us from growing and leaving adolescence, because when we did get a little bit older and it was, we want something to eat, you know, if it was outside of the obviously teenage lads fucking eat from morning to night, can't you? If it was outside the confines of normal staple meals, then it was, yeah, cool, kitchen's there, get it yourself.
Yeah.
So we naturally started to grow those additional skills. But when we were young, if we tried to do something that my dad believed was his role, he would do it for us.
Yeah.
Because it was not necessarily you're not old enough to do that. It was more a case of you shouldn't have to do that. You don't have to do that yourself. I'm here. I can do it for you. That's my role.
Yeah.
And I'm very much the same with my kids.
Yeah.
So like my eldest, he's 15 at the end of this month. So he'll come down and he'll ask if he can get some food. And he'll want to cook himself, or he'll go to start cooking, and I'll stop him and I'll be like, I'll make it for you. Because in my eyes, he's still my little lad. He's still a child. It's still my responsibility.
Yeah.
So he shouldn't have to cook. I mean, if I was out and he wanted to cook, then I can trust him that he can do it without burning the fucking house down. So that level of, like, I'll take my kids through moments where I will refer to it as skill acquisition. I'll be like, right, skill acquisition time. It might be something simple like making the bed.
Yeah.
You know, or just making sure that the room's actually tidied properly, or cleaning the shoes.
Yeah.
You know, if my youngest son, if he's been playing football and his boots are dirty, I will get him to sit with me and he can watch how I clean them, and then starting to transfer the skill over to him. Not so that he has to do it, so that I no longer have to, because I'm happy to do it for him, but it's so that if he needs it and I'm not there, he can then do it himself.
He's seen what it takes to be in your shoes, essentially. Yeah.
So it's, I suppose it's just that balancing act, you know, making sure that they're acquiring skills that they will need later in life without feeling the need that they have to do it for themselves now.
Yeah. Really, really important. Really important.
Very.
I want to touch on the sort of time span when you was a face-to-face training, because me and you agree on this like massively. There's a lot of people that step into a profession or like a type of career that aren't necessarily, in my eyes, they haven't necessarily earned the stripes for it, and like they're not necessarily ready for it. So like me, for example, like I'm a fitness business mentor, but I've been in the industry for 10 years. Like I've had every single job role within the industry before I've actually got there. What's your sort of take in your sort of opinion on that as well?
If you've not done the role that you're trying to coach for long enough, there's going to be so many things that your clients will come up against and will experience that you've had no experience dealing with.
Yeah.
And the only way that you would be able to accurately navigate them through it would be to either for you to then ask somebody else that you know has more experience than you how they would do it, and then you're passing off somebody else's information, or you just advise them blind and learn as you fuck up along the way. But the problem is when it's your own failures, that's how you're supposed to learn. Learning through making somebody else fail through misinformation, that isn't okay. And that's one of the reasons why I have such an issue with it. You know, so whether it's something simple like sales training, you know, if you're a shit salesman, you should never be in a role of trying to teach people how to sell.
Yeah.
Because you've got no experience, you can't do it. But like the old adage goes, those who can't teach. You know, but for me, that should be a prerequisite. You should be able to do what it is that you purport to teach very well. My eldest son, the school that he goes to, they have a business development class. And he asked his teacher, because the teacher was going on about something. And my son, through discussion with me, through observation of what I do with my businesses and things like that, challenged the teacher on something that he'd said.
Yeah.
And then when the teacher asked him why he felt that, he was like, because that's what my dad does. And my dad's got multiple businesses that are really successful. And the teacher made some smart comment. And my son said, how many businesses do you have?
Yeah.
And he has none. So we asked, how many businesses have you had? And he's never had a business.
Yeah.
So it's like I said to my son, and I know people that, oh, you shouldn't say anything negative about teaching, but I live in the fucking real world. And I just said to my son, if you've never had a business, you can't teach people how to run a business. I don't give a shit if you've sat in a class and listened to whatever professor, business management, development, whatever. If you've no real world experience, you shouldn't be teaching it.
Yeah, 100%. Especially with the personal training side of things. When I transitioned onto online from working on the gym floor for so many years, it was little things that I could pick up in the programming side of things. So I used to work with typically like women who were like going to Slimming World. They were quite shy, scared of the gym, but they wanted to kind of lose. But they actually wanted to keep it off. Whereas obviously Slimming World, they keep fucking going back. But tangent anyway, but the things that I kind of picked up on when I was working on the gym floor was when programming, I'm not going to design a program where the back-to-back exercises are back and forth within the fucking gym. I'm not going to program exercises where that very scared and vulnerable woman has got to go into the weights room with all the big men. I'm going to get her to do exercises around the kettlebells. And it's little things like that you don't pick up going straight to online. Obviously, we have so many conversations with people who, I just want to be an online coach. And the vast majority of the time, it's actually, they're not ready for it. So I completely agree with you, because there's just tiny little details where you can exponentially change someone's life just by having that knowledge and having that experience before you actually offer it across.
Yeah. And it's that is fundamental to the whole process. It's just knowing the layout of the gym so that you can make sure that you can kind of advise them on what to do.
Yeah.
Like when I had come back to personal training 2014, one of my clients, Leanne, when she started with me, she was like, I have no confidence at all. She was like, I'm really nervous about wearing like gym stuff, because she was thinking, leggings, sports bra, that sort of thing. I said, have you got any big baggy t-shirts? She was like, yeah. I said, we'll put one of them on. I said, I don't need to be able to see your body whilst you're working out as anybody else. I said, so let's just dress comfortably.
Yeah.
And then we'll just do what we're doing.
Yeah.
And then I took her over to the far corner of the gym and trained and created an entire program for her that could be done in that section of the gym with her facing me whilst I was stood in the corner. So she wasn't aware of anybody.
Yeah.
She was in the corner looking that way.
Yeah.
The entire gym was behind her.
Yeah.
And I would take her through the entire session, mixture between body weight and kettlebells, etc. And then it was probably about 2 to 3 weeks, and her confidence had built enough that she wanted to be stood the other way so she could look out into the gym.
Yeah.
Because she was like, it's a bit claustrophobic just staring into the corner. So I was just like, cool. And when she was making that point, I then knew that things were improving, because when we first started, that was really comfortable for her.
Yeah.
So then she took, and then it was progressive, and then we could go into the cardio area, and then into the free weights area, and then the whole gym was her playground. But somebody that's never had that kind of experience might just try to give them a pep talk and be like, oh, I don't care about what people think.
Yeah.
Fuck them. It's it's your space too. It doesn't work that way. It's not that easy for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I just think you should have done it well before you start trying to tell other people how to do it.
Well, it's the details that create a phenomenal coach. I mean, there's a lot of coaches that we've both seen that just create a plan. And it's a shut up and put up approach. They don't actually listen to the client themselves. And there's a lot of coaches out there, but it's like, in my opinion, it's the details, it's the little things that you kind of pick up and you have done over the years that really create a fantastic coach and a great environment and experience for the client as well. Like, it's really, really important. So talk to me about that transition then. Obviously, all of that experience on the gym floor, work as a trainer, going into the online world as well. What was that transition like for you, and what kind of led you to make that transition?
I think the main precursor for me wanting to make the transition was the fact that my son had been born. So then it was another time expense.
Yeah.
So I thought the more I can cultivate an online business, an online community, the more time I'll be able to be there and be present for him.
Yeah.
So that was the main driver behind it, because I'd done from 2005 through to it was the end of 2010, start of 2011 that I started going online.
Yeah.
So I was already I was already, like 5 to 6 years into one-to-one, face-to-face. And I enjoyed it, but I wanted more
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
And I thought at that point, when I first started, it wasn't that, online will be a viable prospect to leave the gym floor, because online training it wasn't a thing.
No, not at all.
There were no online platforms. I don't even think MyFitnessPal existed at that point. So there was so few features that were available to people when you were online. It was super basic. It was just spreadsheet. That was it.
Yeah.
There was no Google Sheets that were interactive, so you could just type it and it automatically updated. It was old school, but that wasn't the only challenge. It was because it was so new. You were having to explain to people how online coaching could still work, because people's mentality of personal training was, I need you physically there to show me what to do.
Yes. Yeah.
So it was trying to get over that hurdle as well. But it was just one of those things. It was a worthwhile hurdle to actually continue jumping over.
Yeah, of course. Was it a gradual transition for you, or did you just go for it?
No, yeah, it was. So I started end of 2010, early 2011, and I didn't stop face-to-face PT completely until 2016.
Yeah.
It'll have been summer of 2016 when I stopped entirely. And the reason why I stopped was because I'd become aware of the fact that, like, I get up in the morning, and say, like, if I had the kids, I'd do the school run. If I didn't, I'd just get up and I'd work.
Yeah.
And then I'd be like, right, so my first session is at 11 a.m. So in order to make sure that I was there before the session needed to start, so I could be there and give the client maybe 5 minutes to talk before the session started, I was leaving home 45 minutes before the session.
Yeah.
And I only lived around the corner from the gym. Like, if I caught the lights right, it would literally take me about 4 minutes to get there.
Mr. Green Light.
Yeah. But I was finding that getting there, stopping work 45 minutes before the session, a little bit of chat time before the session itself, speaking to them afterwards for 5 minutes or so, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then certainly if I had another one after that, and then getting home, for what I was earning for those, what were 2 hours of session, but was over 3 hours of time, when it was travel time, as far as how much time I had to not do online work.
Yeah.
I was like, this isn't making sense financially anymore.
Yeah. You did math.
Yeah, literally, it was just a case of the amount of money that I could earn online in that time frame is way more than what I am earning in the time that I'm actually doing it. So that's when I made the decision, and I knocked it on the head, and then I went fully online.
Yeah, perfect timing, really, because that's when online started to creep in. So 16, 17 is when obviously Trained by JP started to, like, kick in. There weren't really many people doing it. I mean, obviously we've seen the industry in Ireland. It only kicked in at the start of COVID. There was literally 1 or 2 coaches in Ireland. That was it. As soon as COVID came around, so online coaching is really fucking new still. Like, it's a really new part of the industry as well. And you've been there from the very, very beginning and the sort of get-go of it, which is fantastic. So what kind of led you into the life coaching side of things? Because an experience I kind of felt with my coaching company when, like, touching on COVID, when COVID hit, I went from being a online personal trainer to, in some ways, someone to lean on, because quite a lot of my clients were obviously, like, battling mentally, having problem. And I actually got to a point where I had to subcontract other people in who were a little bit more experienced to deal with it, because, being honest, it was sucking a lot of my energy. I didn't really have a lot of experience to actually provide that help and information, so I didn't, because it'd just be a disservice to those clients that I was actually working with. So I subcontracted the help in. So what kind of steered you into life coaching from your online coaching?
I think it was when I started it back in 2014, as I said, but it wasn't until 2018 that I actually said, like, it's a service that I provide.
Yeah.
And the thing that steered me into it was the 4 years prior to that I'd been working on myself.
Yeah.
And I'd seen the improvements that I'd made in my own mentality, my mindset, my ability to control my anger and things like that. Because when I was saying earlier that it was something that was going to end up causing a problem for me, that's what the problem was.
Yeah. Okay.
And yeah, it was. I think it just felt like it was just a natural progression.
Yeah.
because I was realizing that the more I understood myself and my ability to control my emotions, every bit of that I could impart with my clients relative to food and the days when they didn't really feel like going to the gym, the days they didn't feel like getting up in the morning, you know, those lethargic days, the days when you just want to eat some crap, etc. It was the skills that I'd been teaching myself for the past 4, 5, 6 years that was allowing me to actually get a client, taking them from that position where they wanted to just go, oh, fuck it, and completely getting rid of that emotion for them.
Yeah.
And that's when I really started to realize the validity in that whole element, that genre of coaching, so to speak.
Yeah.
And the more I invested into that myself, as far as books that I was reading and courses and things like that, the better I was becoming as a coach overall. But then I got to a point where I transitioned that I enjoyed that element of it more than the structuring and programming and everything else.
Yeah.
You know, having a client that's whether it was just, even if it was just something simple like they hadn't lost any weight that week, you know, and that was usually a stressor enough for them that they'd then go and make a fucking stupid decision that would make everything worse. And it was just having the ability to go, if you're stressed that you've not lost weight, explain the logic for me of going doing something that is going to cause you to gain weight and add more stress. And then once they'd actually had to think about the answer to that question, they then go, oh yeah, that's fucking stupid, I'm not going to do that. I was just like, there's gravity to this. And the more I invested in it, the better it was becoming, the more I was falling in love with coaching again. And then it got to the point where it was clients coming to me with relationship issues, this issue, that issue, the other issue, and being able to navigate those issues, all with the focus of keeping them on track with the training and the nutrition. But then I just thought, if I can do that with that, I can do it with everything.
Yeah.
And then it just got to the point where I was just like, yeah, I need to do this. This is way more me and where I want to be.
It's a powerful tool, dude. Like it's such a powerful tool, isn't it? Like you can do anything and you can control that. And I think the key thing from just hearing your story, and even though it's relatively brief, but everything that you've done, you've walked the walk. Whereas a lot of people in this generation, this day and age, they go into a job and they want to be the manager, but they're not prepared to be the apprentice first.
Yeah.
And that's something that's a common trait that I've kind of seen from you kind of painting the picture of your journey up until this point. Everything that you're doing now is an accumulation of skills that you've gone in the trenches, been there and done it. It got to a point where you can give that advice. Whereas a lot of people these days, that it does hold them back to a certain extent as well. They kind of rush to the top. And then they haven't actually built the skill sets to actually deliver a service, and they get to the top fast, and then they fall even faster.
Yeah, they do. The level of resilience that you need to maintain the stress levels that you experience when you are very busy and you're at the top, is wildly different than the resilience that you need to get started. And I think that's another element to it as well, because I think quite a lot of my stories, I've just detailed it, which makes it sound like I've just been like happily cruising like all the way from childhood. But in the middle of it, 2014, when I went back to fitness, that was at the point that I'd left my wife.
Yeah.
So obviously my now ex-wife. So I went back into fitness and fully invested myself in that whilst going through a divorce, whilst trying to get used to not waking up with the kids every day, living on my own for the first time. Because when I was 20, I moved out of my mum and dad's, but moved in with my ex-wife. In our own place, in our first apartment together. So it was like everything about my life changed. In the space of, you know, a very short period of time, because I left my job in finance and left my ex-wife in the space of a week. went back into the industry that I'd been in for a long time, but full time. So I had no client base, I had no income. And I'd just moved out of my house. You know, I was trying to find somewhere new to live. Obviously, all money had just been divided immediately. As we separated, we were just like, we're not doing that whole bullshit with the money. We're just going to 50-50 it right down the middle. And then that was it. But then the bulk of that was used when I was setting myself back up. So I was then in a position where I'd gone from earning a lot as a financial advisor, everything was cushy, to living on my own, kids not being there all the time. I still had them half the week, but it was the other half of the week that was like their absence, I felt every fucking second of it.
Yeah.
You know, and then being broke because I hadn't built the business, so I was broke and in debt at the same time, which was a fucking fantastic combination.
Yeah.
And then, like I told you when we were at Gaucho that night, when I went to pick the kids up, drove to Asda, pulled into the parent and child space that was closest to the supermarket because I needed to be in there so that the Wi-Fi from Asda would connect to my phone because I needed to check how much money I had in my account.
Yeah.
And I couldn't because I couldn't afford to pay my phone bill at the time. So my phone had been shut off. So the Wi-Fi eventually connected. I eventually, after trying about 15 times, my banking app connected to tell me that I was £148 over my overdraft.
Yeah.
So I had like negative money. They were charging me on a daily basis for being there.
Yeah.
The fuel light on my car came on as I pulled into the space. And then I checked my wallet and I had 12 quid in it.
Yeah.
And that was all the money that I had in the world at that point. I didn't have a credit card. I didn't have anything. That was all the money that I had. And then I went into Asda with my 3 kids and spent every penny of it on food for them. Didn't get anything for myself. And it was when I was walking out, that was what I refer to as my trigger point, where I was walking out and I was looking at them. My eldest, Gabriel, was holding Penelope's hand. She was still baby at the time. She was still a tot.
Yeah.
Just at that point where they can kind of bumble along when they're holding someone's hand. I was holding my youngest son's hand, and I looked at him, looked at Gabriel and Penelope, and I just thought to myself, they don't deserve to live like this.
Yeah.
And from that point on, that's when I just became completely unreasonable with how much I was willing to work to fix the situation.
Yeah.
To the point where I made myself ill because I was working and sleeping as minimally as possible.
Yeah.
4 hours a night, every night for months and months and months on end.
Yeah.
And it was during 2016 that I actually ended up with Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is a issue with your nervous system, where your white blood cells actually attack the sheath on your muscle fibers that protect them from the electric current.
Right.
That was hands down the most painful thing I've ever experienced. Like, ridiculous. But again, even for all that, I just wouldn't stop.
Yeah.
And it was that relentlessness that came from my dad and the care, that my duties of responsibility to my kids to make sure that they never knew that I didn't have money.
Yeah.
They never knew at any point that Daddy didn't have any money. They didn't know that we were struggling.
Yeah.
Because I would never ever mention it to them. And that part, the majority of that came from, again, what I've been looking into, what I've been studying.
Yeah.
Because your children should never know. When I hear parents saying, we can't afford that, it's too expensive, I'm like, stop fucking saying that to your kids.
Yeah.
Yes, it might be true right now, but don't impart that scarcity mentality on your kids because that imprints on them.
Yeah.
So whilst I was trying to do all of that, I was trying to protect them from every potential negative that could come from my situation.
Yeah.
And then obviously I've gone from there to where I'm at now and then where I'm going.
Yeah.
So it's not all been sunshine and rainbows.
It never is though, and it never is, and it's never earned as well. It's never earned, and like as you was explaining that, I was thinking back to what you talked about your childhood as well. So there's clearly that connection there, and it's important to kind of see that it's not all, like you said, it's not all sunshine and rainbows that you might see on like social media is a highlight reel, isn't it? It's not all sunshine and rainbows to actually get to that point. It's really important, and what you kind of gone through. You essentially you had a decision at that moment when you came out of Sainsbury's. You had a decision. You either look after your kids and you have that responsibility and you fucking go for it, and you give absolutely everything to the point where you got yourself ill to look after them and to provide for them, or you go down the other direction where you just moan about it. Where people kind of go for you got that like two-way street, and you've got that choice, and you made the latter, which is exactly why you're at the position you're in now.
Well, it's part of the mentality that I use with a lot of my clients as well, because in that moment, life was what it was. Yeah, those were my circumstances at that time, and I've always said we're not a victim of our circumstances. You're a victim of how you react to your circumstances. Because I say to a lot of my clients when they're in that mentality of, oh, it's so hard, I don't want to carry on. I just say, what's the alternative? Like realistically, what is the alternative? Yeah, it might be difficult carrying on and doing what you're doing to try to achieve the goal that you've got. What's the alternative? You quit. You stop working towards it to do what? Like what does life become when you stop working towards that goal? So you've got to be conscious of what's the alternative. So yeah, there were times when it was hard. There were times when I was tired. There were times when I was fucking exhausted. And I was just completely unreasonable with myself.
Yeah.
And that is something that's the main reason why I managed to get through it. Because what I used to do, I used to actually imagine in those moments the me of now being stood over me. If I was having a little fucking pity party, I was having a moment where I was like trying to feel sorry for myself because things were shit. I didn't let myself feel sorry for myself. The me of now used to stand over me and go, "What the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
Why are you wasting time feeling sorry for yourself when you could be focusing on fucking working and fixing the situation?
Yeah.
Feel sorry for yourself for the rest of your life and it'll fix absolutely nothing. Or you can spend all of your time working to fix the situation and very soon you won't have anything to feel sorry for yourself about." So that was always just the way that I dragged myself out of that mentality. I refused to allow myself to stay there.
I love that. I love that. Having that vision. I have something similar, but not a vision of me. I've got the vision of my circle that I'm kind of in at the moment. So if I have a moment of, like you said, like a bit of a pity party, a little bit of laziness or whatever it may be, when I know that I can do better or go that extra 1% that day, I think about, okay, what is my circle doing right now?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's John doing right now? What's Elliot doing right now? What's James doing right now? Like what are these guys doing? They're not fucking whinging about it. Like we've set the bar so high within this circle. I've got to keep up.
Yeah.
It's just sometimes it's the environment, or sometimes it's having that vision, but it's kind of pick yourself up. But it makes the success so much more worth it. And Elliot mentioned it this morning in the huddle, didn't he? Like actually achieving something that is earned is so much greater than just receiving it.
Yeah, because obviously a lot of the times when wealth gets mentioned, it comes into a conversation. You always get people, and money doesn't buy happiness, or you'll watch again Diary of a CEO. You'll have people on, and they'll talk about, I know such a body and such a body. They've got all the money that they could ever need, and they're miserable.
Yeah.
They're very, very rarely, if ever, somebody that has achieved that wealth through work. It's like Gary Vaynerchuk. I remember watching him a couple of years ago and he was talking about it. And he said, "Do you know how many trust fund babies I know that are worth 40, 50 million and they're miserable?
Yeah.
Like chronically depressed." It's like, yeah, but the trust fund babies, they've never fucking done anything. They're depressed because they have no purpose.
Yeah.
They're depressed because they've never had to work for a single thing in their entire life. Where if you had that same person, same wealth, but they'd earn it by building a business from the ground up, chances are they would feel a hell of a lot better about themselves because they'd be responsible not only for providing a service or a product, but say you build a company that has a revenue of that much, you've got many employees, which means that you are the reason that those people can support their family and their kids.
Yeah.
If you're in that position, I know myself personally, I would find it difficult to feel shit about myself if I was the reason that there were families worth of kids that were being fed every night.
Yeah.
Because of my hard work and the sacrifices I've experienced, it would make it a hell of a lot more manageable.
Yeah.
And people love to say money can't buy happiness, but I always reply to them and say, what does poverty buy?
It opens.
Yeah, well, there's nothing noble about it. If you end up amassing a huge amount of wealth and you don't want it, give it away.
Yeah.
How many people do that?
Yeah. Yeah. It's not hard to, like, I always used to look at money as opening doors. So like when I first started I was an apprentice for about 3 years. So I was on like £3.50 an hour. But I didn't have many doors open at the time. So I used to look at it as, okay, one door, right? If I start personal training, pick up 10 clients, right? It's going to be able to open another door where I might be able to put a little bit more money into marketing. Let's say, okay, it's going to open up another door. And that's how I look at money as I've kind of like grown and gone around things.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't look at it in that particular way. They kind of think they've only got one door, even though they've got a lot of money. They're not looking at the options that they've actually got. They're not looking at the path that they can actually go down with it.
Yeah, they don't see it as a resource.
Yeah.
Because it's something that you can use to benefit lots of people's lives, not just your own.
100%.
You know, and I think again that's the difference. When you come from a position where you have been in a position of having nothing, how grateful you are for then having something, having that money. It takes on a completely different meaning for you.
Yeah, yeah,
Because I still remember what it felt like to be walking out of that supermarket and being like, cool, I've got a bag of shopping and no money,
yeah,
no money at all to my name.
yeah.
I've got debt and it's increasing. That's all I had, and I was just like, I need to fix the situation
Yeah,
because there is no other alternative.
yeah,
So it was just that's why I am the way I am now, where it's just like I don't need to talk about the problem. I just need to focus on the solution.
yeah, yeah.
You know, and that's it. But I think way too many people at the moment almost see it as if it's a flex to have that sad backstory.
Yeah,
You know, to be honest, that's
I
actually
agree.
that's one of the reasons why I don't really engage with Diary of a CEO very much,
Yeah,
because it feels like every person or every other person that he's got on, it's all about woe is me and you know this shit happened and blah blah. It's just like right, but there's not enough that goes into how did you go from that
yeah,
to where you are now, being a
yeah,
multimillionaire. It's just like, yeah, I get it. People have had trauma in their life,
yeah,
but
yeah,
talk about how you went from that to where you are more.
yeah,
Discuss the strategies that you put in place and the ways that you use things and the way that you controlled and manipulated your mentality and your mindset to go from that place
yeah.
to where you are now. Just doesn't feel like there's anywhere near enough of that.
Yeah, this is exactly why I wanted to do this because there's no journey, and I'll be honest with you. I've recorded quite a few of these now over the last couple of weeks just to kind of get some backlog before they kind of go up. I'm not expecting this to be absolutely humongous, but if it helps someone, it helps someone. And every single person where I've spoke about, okay, what was your upbringing like? It's never been that bad.
Yeah.
Across the board, I'm still yet to have a absolute horrendous upbringing where someone's been brought up maybe in a war zone or something to that sort of level. Like it's always been, I've had a roof over my head, I've had food, I've had loving parents
Yeah.
or a loving parent. It's never actually been that bad, and you're completely right. There's always a sob story behind a lot of these stories that people actually put out there when it's not true. It's not true.
Yeah, and I think that's another part of the issue as well. You do get a lot of people that go on stuff like that, and they do lie.
Yeah.
I'm sure some of them have had specific and you know like awful traumas. I speak to people literally every day that have experienced awful things, so I know how prevalent it can be, how many people can experience things. But why do people want people to feel sorry for them?
Yeah.
That's probably one thing that I am more averse to than probably anything else. Other than people that are just perpetually negative, sympathy. I If somebody acts sympathetic towards me, I will fucking roast you.
Mm.
I will shut you down in a fucking heartbeat. Keep your fucking sympathy to yourself. I don't need that bullshit. And I will never give somebody sympathy because it's fucking useless. Because sympathy to me is nothing but expressing an emotion that allows that person to continue to feel sorry for themselves and stay where they are. That is not what I need to do for people. I work through empathy. So I will empathize with someone for the situation that they're in. And it's through that empathy that my desire to find a solution to their problem is so high that if the first solution doesn't work, there'll be a second and a third and a fourth and a fifth and a sixth. And I
Yeah.
will keep going until we fix the problem. That's driven by empathy, not sympathy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because for me, there's something about sympathy that just feels selfish. It's like people express sympathy because it makes them feel good about themselves. Like, oh, I really care about people. It's like, yeah, but you're not doing anything.
Yeah.
It's like praying. You know, something bad happens, people, oh, send me thoughts and prayers. Brilliant. That's not a thing.
Yeah.
That's not doing anything for anybody, mate. Just to let you know.
It's the same thing that what we kind of touched on. I mean, when people are in that position where they do need the help, and then sympathy, they're constantly reminding themselves and keeping them in that position. Whereas what you're doing, you're just saying, no, let's move. Whereas a lot of like therapy, a lot of sympathy, a lot of that self-reflecting sort of period for a lot of people, they just keep going back to the same fucking problem like over and over again. They're not moving. So that's exactly what sympathy is.
Yeah, because for me, I want the time that somebody has to work with me to be as short as possible, which seems counterintuitive for a service-based industry. But I would rather say if over the course of my career, you know, and everybody that I worked with was with me for 12 months. And that meant that I could work with a maximum of maybe 1,000 people over the time of my career. Or I could get it so that everybody that was with me was averaging 3 months, but genuinely fixed at the end of it.
Yeah.
And that meant that I could work with 4 or 5, maybe even 6,000 people over the time of my career and earn the same amount of money. I would rather do that.
Yeah.
Because I would rather help more people. Whereas it feels like a lot of traditional therapies, it's keep dragging somebody over the same broken glass. They keep saying the same things again and again. They get asked a question or two that allows them to continue to gush their emotions.
Yeah.
But there's nothing within it. There's no work to be done in between the sessions. And this isn't me saying it to try to belittle or undermine or break down traditional therapies. I'm repeating what my clients say to me from their experience of traditional therapies. And it's not one or two, it's all of them. You know, and it's not me saying that there are no good psychologists, psychiatrists, counselors, therapists, because I have worked with a lot of people that have said that was the platform that we used, but he used to do this. She used to also do this.
Yeah.
But the good therapists, the good psychologists are always the ones that are attached to, yeah, that was the platform, but she used to do this for me as well. He used to always get me to do this. And it's all the extra shit outside of that general funnel of traditional therapies that made them as brilliant as they were.
Yeah.
So it was them moving outside of the box within the confines of what they were allowed to do. And it was those little individual bits that they added to their therapy that made them so good. Every single person that I've worked with that had a therapist or whatever that just told that line and just ran down the track, they're all the same.
Yeah.
None of them have helped any of the people that I've been with.
Yeah.
You know, and some of them have spent fortunes. Speaking with a woman last week, £125 a session. And she said it's done nothing.
Yeah.
And it has been months. And it's done nothing. I'm like, how do you justify it? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, it's the wife had some therapy when we was in Spain. Hopefully she doesn't mind me saying that, she watches. I won't go into detail, but like every single time that she came off a session, she'd be upset. And it's because all she was doing was she was almost going backwards into the problem. She was going, okay, why did this happen? Why?
Yeah.
She was essentially going back and deeper and deeper and deeper into the problem, to the point that like the wife was just upset all the time, like every single time she came off a session, instead of going forward like you're kind of discussing that.
Well, that's what I refer to as the therapy hangover. I've had some clients. One of my clients, Lisa, she told me that if she had a session at 3 p.m, she would get home for about 4:30 and she would sleep until the following morning. I was just like, nobody should ever be that exhausted after a therapy session.
Yeah.
But like what you were saying, why? Why do you think that happened? How do you think you could have reacted differently?
Yeah.
And what do you think the result of that would have been? A lot of it's hypothetical bullshit. It's fucking irrelevant. It's gone. Like, learn what you can learn from the situation and then just fucking aim forwards.
Yeah.
You know, but they don't, and it's this constant rehashing of the same shit over and over again, and it's completely fucking pointless.
Yeah, exactly. Completely agree with you. Completely agree. We'll try and wrap up, buddy. I've kept you on for quite some time, so I appreciate that. What's the number one thing to kind of leave people with who are, again, starting from the ground up, pardon the pun, but this is the whole purpose of this, but people who are starting out in their business journey, they're looking to get going, they might be scared, they might be holding themselves back, there's something that's just not letting them unleash and fucking go for it. What would that number one sort of lesson from you be, or piece of advice?
For people starting out in business, I would probably say there's a couple of things that are very important. Probably the most important is be optimistic. Wherever there is a fork in the road where you think, right, this could go well or it could go bad, always focus on it going well. You know, if you're creating a lead magnet, if you're going to put an advert out, if you're going to put a call to action, doesn't matter what it is. If you're going to reach out to somebody, in any capacity, whether it's an email, a DM, a phone call, it doesn't matter what it is. Whatever it is that you're doing with your business, be unreasonably optimistic.
Yeah.
Think of it in the capacity that you can't imagine your business failing, because the way that you work when you look at things that way is unbelievably different than if you're pessimistic. Because if you're pessimistic, all you will do is you will procrastinate to avoid doing the things that you automatically think this isn't going to work, which is uncomfortable, which means that you're not going to want to do it anyway, which means the level of work that you actually achieve is way down here.
Yeah.
You know, show me how much work an optimistic individual does in a day in comparison to a pessimistic person. The optimistic person will be right up here, because it doesn't have to come off. It doesn't have to be perfect at the end of every single thing that they do, but they're going to think that it's going to be better anyway, because optimistic people generally have better self-esteem and better self-belief.
Yeah.
And it's because if they're optimistic and you think, well, if I put loads of effort into this, it's going to work. And then any result that they get from it, they think that's because of me. That's because of the work that I've done.
Yeah.
So it's like, right, sweet, keep doing it. If I've done X amount of work and I've gotten Y result, if I double this, I'm going to double this. And then if I double this, I'm going to double this. And they just think, fuck, I'm just going to get to work. Whereas the pessimistic person tries to put in as little effort as possible to get the maximum result, because they think, well, it's probably not going to work anyway, so I'm not going to do too much. So they do a little bit of work and they either get very small or no results and go, oh, I knew it wasn't going to work. And then they don't do it again.
Yeah, it failed before they started.
Yeah. It's very much that is the principle of Tony Robbins and his potential cycle.
Yeah.
Which is that self-sustaining prophecy. You know, the potential that you see in your ability to succeed will control the amount of action you take. The amount of action you take controls the results, and the results that you get controls your self-belief.
Yeah.
So as your self-belief goes up, the potential that you see for success increases. You take more action, get better results, and it continues and grows and grows and grows and grows. That's the optimistic. The pessimistic is you see little potential, so you take little action, you get shit results, your self-belief drops, even less potential, even smaller action, worse results, less self-belief, and you quit.
Yeah. So
if you're going to start anything, or if you've already started a business, be optimistic.
Yeah, really important, really important. What was the second one? You mentioned you had two.
No, that was it. It was be optimistic, but be unreasonable in your approach for things. Right. Like if I wasn't as unreasonable with myself as I was, you know, people say, oh, I'm really harsh on myself. I love investigating that with people when they say things like that, because I'm just like, well, what does that actually mean? Because there's very different ways that you can be harsh with yourself.
Yeah. You
can be harsh with yourself where you just break yourself down. Oh, you're fucking useless, you're stupid, you're shit, you can't do anything. And that's being harsh with yourself, but that's worthless.
Yeah.
That is you being harsh with yourself to no end, to no benefit. I'm incredibly harsh with myself in the sense of I will work hard and I'll be in my own ear going, you could work harder than this.
Yeah.
I know that you've got the potential to do more work than this. That amount of work that you've just done in the last week, you could probably fucking double that if you really focused. So I'm harsh with myself because as much as I work and as hard as I work and as consistent as I already am, I still expect more from myself.
Yeah.
But it's not to break myself. That I'm not going, oh, you shit, you could do more than that. It's like, I know that you can do more than that. So it's different. Again, it's that optimistic pushing of myself.
Yeah.
So that would be the two things. However hard you work, just know that you can do more.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Where can people find you if they've watched this and want to reach out and speak to you personally?
The best places to find me would be through my Instagram, which is Andrew Keeler _EBD, which is the Evolved by Design. And the other place that they can get me is also on Instagram on the Male Support Network.
Yeah.
And also on TikTok.
Which is huge things with that as well, by the way. Obviously, we had a chat about where you want to take that and where it's kind of going. So definitely get involved in that as well. But mate, thank you for jumping on. Thank you for giving your time.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure, mate.
Hero, enjoy the rest of your day, buddy.
You too. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.